Now it goes to her system, not mine. All right. So every mobile home purchase is a little bit different at the beginning because it just depends on what the listing agent wants. So when it comes to mobile homes, most mobile homes are in mobile home parks, and you need to have management approval in order to purchase the mobile home, right? So it works a lot like a apartment complex, right? You're renting the land and you're buying the mobile home that goes on that land is how it works. So that is the process. So some mobile homes and some listing agents, they'll say, hey, yeah, write us an offer. Once we have an accepted offer, then you have 24 hours to get your documents into the management company to get approval. And that's part of the contingencies of the purchase of the mobile home is getting park approval. And some listing agents, which, there's lots of different ways to do things. Some will require them to get approved by the park ahead of time. Here's the problem with that. It's smart, right? It's smart that, hey, I don't want you to write an offer if the park's not going to approve you. So let's get the park to approve you first, which makes sense in one aspect. In the other aspect, you don't make best friends with the park manager doing it that way, because now you've got 10 people trying to get park approval and bugging them, and only one person's going to enter into contract on this property. And so you're now annoying the park manager with 10 extra applications that they don't have to do and slowing the process down ultimately. So it just depends how the listing agent is running it. The park approval process, you'll need to put your buyer in contact with the park manager. Usually that information is listed or you get it from the listing agent, and they go in and they talk. They usually have to submit it is like you're applying for a apartment or whatever. It's usually got some sort of application process. They may look at their credit. So if you've got the situation where they've already had their credit pulled, it might be advantageous to see if we can get a copy of that credit report from the lender, so that you can submit it. They don't have to repull credit necessarily. Some are going to do it anyways. And they're going to want to get their income documents and stuff. For the most part, most mobile home parks require somewhere around 3 times the amount of space rent in income if they're not going to have a loan on the property. So if they're buying cash, and if they're going to finance part of it, then it might be more in income, because they want to make sure that, hey, no matter what, we're going to get our space rent, and they're going to protect that portion of it. And you can always call the management and ask. So let's say that you are supposed to write the purchase agreement first and then get park approval. You can always call the park management and just have a conversation with them on, hey, what are you going to require income wise and assets and everything for somebody to purchase the mobile home that's for sale in your park? We just want to make sure that we have a pretty solid bet that we can get park approval from you before we consider looking in this particular area. And they'll usually have a system or whatever, 4 times the park rent or whatever it might be in order to qualify, so that you have a pretty good bet that you can or can't qualify for that park. Does that make sense?
It does. So we've done those steps already.
Yeah.
They're getting a little strict too, because one park, and these are senior communities too. One park, you had to have a 700 credit score, nothing lower. And then they're all 3 times the rent, but the rent space, we are like $1,000, $1,300. You know what I mean? And so then I'm like, okay, well, we did that application for them. They're running her credit, then the loan, and then we still need to put in an offer for the house, for the actual mobile home. So I'm just like, it's just new. I'm just not really familiar of how these steps work. I also too, do they overbid for mobile homes?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a multiple offer situation, absolutely, you can overbid for a home, for sure. So it just depends on the situation.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing too is usually when the mobile home park pulls the credit, it acts as like a lease or an apartment. So it's usually more of a softer pull. It's not a hard pull. So it usually doesn't count as bad against the applicant's credit score. It's not going to cause it to go down. And as long as this all happens within a 30-day period, you're allowed to shop for loans and mortgages. So as long as it's being pulled by mortgage companies or whatever multiple times in a 30-day period, it also usually does not affect the credit score.
Okay. So, yeah, well, I'm quite the ride.
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you know, you gotta flesh out that process ahead of time, the one you guys are looking at. And yeah, the park rent is usually in the MLS, just so you guys know, you have to like kind of scroll down and look for it to see what the park rent is gonna be. And then you always run that by your buyer. Like I've had a couple buyers like, oh, this one looks good. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but the space rent's like $800. And they're like, oh, never mind. I didn't realize there was,
Right.
right? A lot of people don't realize that here's how it works. It's like, hey, I just thought I had to buy the mobile home in the park and then I get to live there. Well, no, you have to pay rent on the land.
Yeah.
And also the other thing is too, is that if you can get a copy of those rules and regulations for the mobile home park ahead of time from the listing agent, that's also helpful because that's just like an HOA. There's rules, regulations, number of dogs you can have, if you can have dogs or cats at all, if they're allowed to be outside, how big they can be, like all those things fall into those rules and regulations, which may turn somebody off from the park itself. Once you enter into contract on a mobile home, the contract's a little different. There's like a mobile home addendum or whatever, and that has the numbers. They have HUD identification numbers on mobile homes, and like if it's a double wide, that means they should have like two of them generally. You've got one for each piece that was carted down. Versus like a single wide is going to have one. So those are usually in the MLS. So that's part of the purchase agreement. But most everything else in the purchase agreement is going to be very similar to a regular purchase agreement. And the transaction is going to flow very similar to a purchase agreement. You know, you can have inspections done. You can have a whole house inspection done, a pest inspection, a roof inspection. You can have all those things done on a mobile home if you choose to. And they'll look at all those. It's not a bad idea to at least have that whole home inspection, same idea as a house, like know what you're getting into. They're going to look underneath the unit. They're going to look up top. They're going to run all the systems and components, make sure everything's functioning, to make sure it's a decent purchase. And then mobile homes typically, they're considered a depreciable asset, which is why you can't go through a normal lender for a mobile home purchase. And that being said, they do gain value. It's just a very slow process. Like, you know, a house in 2 years is going to be worth potentially significantly more than where you purchase it today, right? Like people that purchased a house 2 years ago are like, you know, winning at this point. They could turn around and sell it and upgrade or do whatever, take the equity and run. Whereas a mobile home, the price is going to go up, like it may have changed 10%, which is still you're purchasing it at 150,000. So maybe it's gone up like 10,000 or 15,000 versus the significant jump we're seeing in regular houses. So just something to be aware of with that portion of it. But most of the process works just like a normal purchase. And you have to choose a specific title rep. There's a very few title reps that deal with mobile homes. It still goes through title and escrow, still goes through that process, but you just have to call the company and be like, hey, who in your office handles mobile homes? And they'll send you, it may be locally or it may be in a different office, to the person who does the mobile home transaction.
Oh, okay. Let me ask another question. And are you have you heard of the parks like raising the space rent 5% annually?
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be unheard of to have it written into the contract that they're raising them by a certain amount. You know, that's not a significant amount. I mean, over the course of several years, it would be, but if you had, you know, a space rate rent at $1,000, I'm just double checking my math, that's $50. So it might go up $50 when you go in for your renewals next year. Does that make sense? So yeah, I mean, it's very like a house rental or anything else that has the potential to be raised at the renewal.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, any other questions with the mobile home deal? All right, fabulous. Anybody else have questions about mobile homes or anything other random before we jump in? There's lots of different types of purchases. So it's all, you know, you just kind of experience them, and some things we don't think about because you don't do mobile home purchases very often. There's not a huge inventory of them in this area. And so you kind of just like cross that bridge when you get there. I think I've done 1 or 2 mobile home transactions. And they range from like manufactured homes to mobile homes to, you know, whatever on the properties. And a manufactured home or mobile home on is always going to require different financing, but it's different whether you own the land or whether you rent the land. So most mobile home parks, you're renting the land. You don't actually purchase the land, you're just purchasing the unit itself. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. But regular homes, regular single family residences that have manufactured homes on them versus a regular single family home, you always want to check with your lender because it's usually a little bit different than your traditional conventional or FHA or VA loan. Sometimes they require a little bit more down, even though like manufactured homes today, a lot of times you can't even hardly tell that they are different than a regular stick built home. They're very nice and very similar this day and age, but they still have some different requirements associated with them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So today I was going to talk a little bit about, I was going to piggyback on the panel that we had yesterday. Did everybody watch the panel yesterday?
Yes.
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 Did you have ahas from the panel yesterday?
Yes.
You want to share your aha, Mila?
Yeah, I had a few ahas.
Share a couple of them with us.
My aha from Nathan was the work he puts in. So I got my aha with him about how much work he puts in. For Seeing Deep, my aha with him is his consistency with working with his community. I thought that was fantastic. My aha with Stella was how when she said she even talks about real estate and Target, I was trying to chime in and ask her a question, but I was on a different phone and I couldn't access the mute button without going all the way off the Zoom. But I wanted to know, like, how in depth in conversation does she get when she's at Target? Like, do you just say you're a realtor, you pass the card, or does she really like pull out her phone? I didn't get that part. Get their telephone number, email address, like that. That's extremely hard for me. Gathering everyone's information from the first beginning of initially meeting them because I don't want to feel intrusive. And then I liked with, I didn't catch the other lady's name. It wasn't Sophie. It was from Green Valley.
Yeah.
That she focuses on just one particular farming area instead of being all over. I thought all those points were great.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing Stella, she probably gets all of their information at that first conversation, goes very deep. She probably knows exactly what's going on with their entire family by the time she finishes that conversation at Target.
Okay.
That being said, Mila, to help you get through because it's always better to get information than it is to hand a card, right? Because when we get somebody's information, it's prospecting. When we hand a card, it then becomes basically like marketing, right? Like we're like, hey, here's this, hope you call, good luck type thing, versus getting somebody's information. So one way to get through that hurdle of like not wanting to dig too deep or not wanting to be an inconvenience or whatever, don't take your cards with you to Target. Okay. When you have a conversation with Target and you're like, oh, hey, let me give you my card. And then you're like, oh man, I left them in the car. What's your number? Can I get your number? And then I'll send you over my digital card.
Okay.
Okay.
Smooth operator.
Smooth operator.
For sure.
And then you can feel like, oh man, I forgot them in the car. I forgot them in the car on purpose, but let me get your information and then have that digital card and share it with them. And then, you've got their information so you can reach back out to them instead of hoping that they call you.
Okay. I have to work. I that's a work in progress. I have to pull the courage to get that deep.
That really surprises me with you. I feel like you are a talker and very friendly and outgoing. And
Me too.
I would
agree.
have expected you have conversations with people everywhere you go, Safeway, Target, and that you are a lot like Stella, where you probably know all their business by the time you walk out of there. So I'm a little surprised that you need to work up that courage. Just do it.
I
You
feel
know
like,
what I think it is?
Myla, I feel
Yeah.
like you are easy to start conversations, but you probably think about it in your head that you're asking something else when you're already like naturally having a good conversation with people. And so like, I think if you just ask that extra question, people would be like super willing to give you the information because you're so like easy to talk to.
Well, thank you, Maciel. I appreciate that. I will work. I have to work on that. I think with me, I allow people to give me their energy, but I'm afraid to give my energy back. You kind of understand what I'm saying? Like you
Yep.
can tell me everything about you, and then I'll say I'm a realtor, and then I freeze because I'm just like, oh, you know what I'm saying? I get stuck. I really get stuck. I really get stuck.
Okay. All right.
I'm
And-
with you, girl. I agree. I'm the same way.
Me too. I'm just like, do I say anything? And then probably, oh, you know, my friend is a realtor, my sister's a realtor, and this person's a realtor, and that person's a realtor. And I'm thinking to myself, why did I even say anything? Because now I feel stupid. You know, I'm trying to compete with
because
this
then you
person
go-
that has all these other people in their family.
Yeah, but then you know, you do, then you go, yeah, you know what the problem with family that are realtors are is that oftentimes like trying to do a real estate transaction with family, it ruins the relationship. It just becomes really awkward really quick. So if you need somebody outside your family, like I'm happy to help. What's your number? I'll stay in touch. Right? So never
Well,
hesitate.
that was smooth and quick, Amy. That was, I have to write down because I do know people who don't like to work with their family, but I don't know what, I don't know. I got to go talk to the Wiz because I still get stuck like I'm selling and I know I'm bringing value because I give them all the information and then, I don't know, maybe I don't know my words. I got to work on myself. I got to meditate and pray.
It sounds like affirmations need to be being said every day.
Yeah, affirmations, and let's get some scripts. Let's have you guys in here practicing like, hey, let's practice what we're gonna say to people in Target or in the grocery store, or how are we gonna get there, right? Like just practice with each other doing that like conversation. Number one, breaking into conversation, and number two, can be like, oh man, let me give you my card. Oh, I forgot it. Let me get your contact information. I'll send you over my digital card, right? Like let's just practice that. Let it become more comfortable, and so that you feel like you can communicate that well, and that your brain will start to remember it. You won't have to worry so much about getting tied up and trying to think about what to say. It'll just happen.
As soon as he finishes his
Yeah.
morning jog, he will swing by and take a look.
I will even say, even if you don't want to bring up real estate necessarily, like I had a conversation with a gal in Starbucks and I loved her energy and just everything she was about or whatever. And I was like, hey, I love adding people to my social media that just, you know, complimenting her. I mean, I wasn't lying to her. She was a legit cool person. And then so at that point was able to get her Facebook, and it kind of gives them that comfort of like, if I'm going to add you or not add you, but you still have their contact, a direct source of contact to them, even if it's not their phone number.
Yep.
And people feel a little bit more comfortable with that too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What were some other ahas from the panel yesterday?
I had an aha, like kind of how Milo was, you know, from Nate. I got like, I really liked his, you know, fail forward thing. I've heard it before, but like coming from someone that's juggling multiple things too, that was just that, like, you know, it's okay to fail. And I think that's like, I needed that, like, it's really okay to fail because it's not going to all go perfectly. I mean, everybody that's done either a transaction or a phone call or anything has, you know, felt like they failed, but they keep going, right? So that was that, I took that away from him. And Sandeep, I was like, I really appreciated him because of the fact that being like an at-home mom and having those juggling roles and sometimes kind of feeling like, you know, not so much like, oh, I need to be like him type of deal, but it was reassuring that you can do it, you know, because that's kind of my thing now. It's like, I don't have any transactions at this point, have a lot of stuff in the pipeline, but I'm kind of nervous. I'm like, what happens when that time comes and I actually have something? I'm like, am I going to be able to juggle all this, you know? So it was kind of reassuring to see that he's doing everything that he's doing, and he's living a joyful life, you know what I mean? And you could tell he's very, if you follow him on social media, he looks very active with his family too. It's not like he's just in the zone, you know what I mean? And obviously he's expressed how much he's been a part of his family life. So that was cool. Steph, I liked hers was kind of eye-opening in a different direction. I like that she was, you know, working for like her weekends and her trips and all those types of things, but it was also for me kind of as a mom, and nothing on Steph, this is not it, but like, you know, kind of with her kids, how she was talking about like the 1 second and like they know her for 1 second, all that stuff kind of just made me more aware of how I want to move forward with my business and making sure that, you know, how present I am. And I'm not saying she's not, so nobody takes that, you know what I mean? But it just made that awareness come to top of mind of how starting my business, I want to keep that going. And then Stella was just more of, okay, Melissa, I'm not really in the stores a lot as much as I used to be. And I'm like, okay, I got to do that more because I am a talker and I will go talk to you while we're in the you know, crown aisle looking for things, and I will bring up a conversation. And I mean, I've given out a card for Young Living essential oils one time because I kept bumping into the same lady all the way up to the register. I'm like, we're going to be friends now. Here you go. And so, you know, just those types of things. So, so yeah, no, it did take away a lot of different ahas from yesterday.
Nice.
And Melissa, if you ever need a sitter, 2 more will just blend right in with these guys if you need to go do something.
I appreciate it.
Thanks. Thanks, Anastasia. I'll drop mine off. Now you'll have 5 boys.
Hey, I got you, girl. If my mom could do it, I could do it. I might not have any hair left, but I could do it.
I appreciate that.
I mean, my kids were young when I got started in real estate. They used to come with me to go to showings. You know, they used to, when they were old enough, they sat in the car, but when they weren't, they were like tagging along with me, like, hey, you got to hold my hand. Like, and it usually wasn't that first meeting with the client, but the second or third, like they knew I was a mom, they knew I was busier. I'd be like, yeah, I can absolutely show that house to you, but I don't have, you know, I'm with my kids right now. So they're going to come along with me. And I would just let them know that ahead of time. Like, you know, it is what it is. And people appreciate you being real and appreciate you. And most of the people that you're probably going to do business with are probably going to be other parents and, you know, people similar to you, and they're not going to think twice about it when they're like, oh yeah, my kid's got to come, right? It's just part of the process or whatever.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was another huge thing with Steph, that when she mentioned that, I was like, yep, because she had said, you know, nope, sorry, I have whatever, the recital or whatever it was, like, it, you know, no. And I was like, and that for me is like, I feel very strong of like where she was at. Like, I am family oriented, even though, like I said, we all get these phone calls in the middle of something. I'm on a Zoom call, you know what I mean? But that type of thing. But it's like, she's very present in her family life. And so that's what I was like, the big takeaway. And I really like that. And she's up front, because I think sometimes I feel like, I can't do that because I have to go pick up my kid at 1 or just whatever. I mean, like, that's totally fine because I'm a mom, like, and that comes first. So I think that people respect that, and that's what you have to put top of mind, you know, that's just that.
Yeah, absolutely. Other ahas from yesterday?
I think they were all good. I definitely can relate to Sandeep, and it was kind of reassuring for me. It was reassuring for me because I know, like, I'm really faith-based, like at my church and in my community and with my friends. And so it was really validating to go, you know, I don't have to compromise those things to have my business. Like, I can build a team around me of people that are going to have the same, you know, mindset as me, and not just go wherever I think I need to, you know, just grab somebody and be like, okay, you're here, and that's it, you know. And Amy's been helping me with that too. Like, just, you know, if you don't work well with somebody, then just move on to somebody else until, and I think that's a good, you know, it's just a good reassurance. Definitely with the mom thing. And I like Stella too, like just how she's just so like outside herself, just talking. And it's like, I talk to everybody, you know, everybody knows I talk a lot, but it's like, I talk to people all the time, but it's like just a simple thing of being like, hey, yeah, do you want to go to real estate school. You know, I mean, that happened the other day, and then I have somebody to put into the school, and it's just like, it's so easy, like, you know, so it's just reassuring to know like people are succeeding in doing these things that are being put before us, and that it shows, right? It shows that the models and the systems that we're doing and all these things that we're trying to follow are going to be beneficial and help us. Yeah.
I need that thing Stella sends her people about the 10 reasons to come work for Keller Williams, because I have sent probably, I'm gonna say maybe about 5 people to the SCORE school. And I talk and try to bring people all the time over to Keller Williams.
Yeah.
That's a shame. I can do that, but I ain't got the courage to talk. Oh, Lord, I need help. But I think because I already know that they're interested, I think my fear is talking to people who are not necessarily interested. Okay, but that was my aha on this conversation. But I need those 10 steps, because that's great. Like, I invited somebody to come to a family reunion this weekend, actually 2 people. But if I could have had that 10 steps to the reason why they should choose Keller Williams, I could have sent them that too, as well.
Yep, have something to back it up with, a little something to kind of stay in touch with, right? Have a drip campaign, a touch campaign, right? For those people that are realtors that you're wanting to bring over to Keller Williams, or those that should be getting their license. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend, I ain't gonna hold up this whole meeting. I'm sorry, y'all, but I'm just talking. I had a friend tell me this morning that her whole brokerage moved over to EXP. And when I tell you, that has not sit well with me all morning. I'm like, what? How in the heck did y'all move over to EXP? It was a small brokerage, maybe about 5 agents, but still, EXP, no way. So now I'm just like, I'll talk her off out of that brokerage to get her over to Keller Williams.
Before she gets going.
Right.
Tell her now, since her brokerage left her, now's a good time for her to leave her brokerage.
Right.
That's a bummer. Yeah. Any other ahas? All right. So here's the one theme that I found between all the people on the panel yesterday. It all came down to values.
Yeah.
Right? It came down to what was important to them at the deepest level to them, what was important, and were they adhering to that in order to be successful? And right, and you guys even mentioned it in your ahas, like, hey, Sandeep, he was like, his family is so important to him, and being there for his daughter, and the same thing with Steph and everything, right? Like that, hey, I'm going to be at a game, or I'm going to be at a concert tonight, so I know I can't show properties, or I can't do that. Like, adhering to where you stand with your values will get you extremely far, because what happens is when your business comes in alignment with your values, you'll be able to operate at a much higher level. If you're going against your values, right? If your value is family, and one of your values is family, and you're constantly like, oh, I've got to work this weekend, I've got to work this evening, and gosh, I haven't seen my kids in a while, or I keep missing baseball games. The work side of things is going to suffer, even though you're spending more and more hours trying to like generate business and trying to be busy and trying to make things happen. It's going to suffer because your values aren't in alignment with each other. Your business values and your family values aren't in alignment. This was a very slow realization for me, right? It's happened over time. And I would say this last year, I came the closest to mastering it than I probably ever have. And I did the most business, and I had the most free time, and I made the most money that I've had, and I had the most fun doing it, which is one of my business values, just for the record. In fact, that pops up often in just about every aspect of my life. When I look at my values, is having fun. I like to have fun. So something to think about, and you're going to have different values in different areas. Okay. So just kind of keep that in mind. So the areas of your values that you really want to think about and spend some time on, I think there's like 7 of them. There's finances, there's business, there's job, relationships, physical health, personal life, and spirituality. Okay. So just kind of keep that in mind. There's these 7 little cogs, and I believe it talks about it in the MREA. See if I can find the little tabby. It may take me a while. I may have to come back and tell you what it is. I think it's maybe under. It's probably under the U tab. It starts on page probably 253-ish. But it talks about values and spending some time. So when I look at like my business values, and you usually want to identify somewhere between 3 to 5 items. And then you're going to put them in order. So my business values are freedom, flexibility, fun, fulfillment, or that I'm making a difference or have a purpose, and finances, that I'm making money. And in your business values, making money should be in there someplace. Just know that it needs to be part of those values, because that is why we do business. If we didn't have to make money, we wouldn't be doing business, right? We would be home with our families or riding horses all day or going on vacation all the time, right? Like, so somewhere in there, your business values have to come in alignment with the fact that, hey, we're doing this because we want to make money, because we have other things that we want to be doing, right? Like, so just kind of keep that in mind. In addition to that, we have to define what that looks like, right? So like for business, for me, like freedom, it's I will be in control of how I choose to run my business, right? That's what business looks like to me in freedom, and they're in order. So we take and put what our priority is. So freedom is one of my priority ones. Like if I don't have the freedom to run my business how I want to, that's why every time somebody's like, oh, maybe a team, or maybe get a job, I'm like, no. Like they asked me a couple times to be team leader, and I'm like, oh no, like you're gonna tell me what to do and how to do it, what time to show up, like, ooh, no, I'll just quit. Right? Because that freedom to me is huge. Flexibility, I will have the flexibility to choose when and where I work. Right? Fun, that's why on Monday afternoons, most of the time, I'm riding horses. Right? I don't mind working on the weekends, but I'm going to choose to have the freedom and flexibility. I'm going to take Monday off. Fun. I will have connected with my clients with smiles and laughter, helping others to see and embrace the positive in each situation. That's what fun looks like to me. Fun might look different to other people. Fulfillment. At the end of the day, I'll be able to look back and see that my clients are in a better place or situation because of our interaction. Right? The other day, I had a miscommunication with one of my clients. He thought I said something that I didn't. It's okay. But he was very upset because he thought what we were agreeing to was 10,000 above appraised value, regardless of where the appraised value came in. So if the appraised value came in at contract price, the buyer was going to pay 10,000 over that. Even though I very clearly outlined exactly what it would look like at different appraised values and what we would actually sell at, but he misunderstood me. And at the end of the day, in fact, it still bothers me that he was frustrated about that, because at the end of the day, when I looked back, I didn't feel like he was in a better place because of our interaction. Right? Finances, making money. The purpose of business is to fund my family's life so that we have the means to do more and create passive income. Right? That's what success and that's what fulfilling that value looks like to me. So, we can kind of talk about this a little bit more. It's 10:38. We have a little bit more time. But some things to think about. So again, you have those 7 areas, and like I said, it may look a little different. So for finances, for me, it's the vehicle to live my dreams, freedom, security, my money's working for me, and stability. Those are my values under finances. Right? And then if you look at my values, I haven't completed all mine yet. For physical health, it's quality of life, having energy, having fun, and freedom. Freedom pops up a lot in mine too. Fun and freedom. It may as well just be the same. In fact, my word of the year, my coach made me choose one. I was reluctant. My word of the year is freedom. So my physical health, what it looks like to be successful, and the values of my physical health. And I made my coach work with me on this one because I really struggled. It was like, I just want it to be fun and easy. And that's not actually possible with like physical health. Like it's not easy, but it was, hold on. I feel like I'm missing a word here. I will be achieving my values with regards to physical health when I can get out and do the activities that I want without feeling limited by my weight, restricted movement, and exhaustion, When I look in the mirror, I'll be proud of the body looking back at me, and I will know balance and moderation, being able to partake of the foods that I enjoy. The road to achieving my values may have ups and downs, but I will have fun in the journey. Right? So when you looked at the panel yesterday, Nathan was like, hey, I'm air traffic controller and I'm achieving my goals in air traffic. Like I'm winning awards and doing well. And I'm like being my best self in air traffic controller. And in my family life, my wife's pregnant. We're getting ready to have a baby. And in my business, like I'm growing that, right? And he was in alignment in all three areas with working towards achieving those values. Same thing with Sandeep, right? He's like, hey, I want to grow my real estate business and I want to be successful, but my daughter's important to me and my parents are important to me. So I may not be operating at 100% in my business because my 100% is really over here. Right. And instead of fighting that and being like, oh, I just want to spend more time and I need to close more deals and I need to do this and my family's important, but gosh, at some point I'll put them as the priority. He's like, no, here's my priority. I'm going to figure out how to work my business around that to make it work for us. Right? Same thing with Steph. Right? My family is my priority. So I'm not going to go show properties on Saturday. I did mention to her that she may want to enlist the help of like a showing assistant to help with that. Like, hey, free up even more time and don't feel like you're compromising, like have somebody else go show the properties. Leverage your time out even better by doing that, right? But she's like, hey, if my kids have something, like that's where I want to be. I'm gonna go hand out t-shirts for PE and I'm gonna wear my real estate t-shirt so that people know I'm a realtor at the same time, right? Like, so figure out how to make it work within your guidelines of what is important to you, what brings you joy, and what at the end of the day makes you feel satisfied. And when you're fighting against those things, you will never feel good at the end of the day. Okay, so I would encourage you to spend some time over the next weekend, digging into those 7 areas and trying to figure out what your values look like in each one. And in the first, so some ways to make it, are you trying to figure out what the 7 areas were? They're not up there. The 7 areas are finances, business, job, relationship, physical health, personal life, and spirituality. Okay. And your values. So I have my notes from my thing that I did. Your values are your deepest level of programming. It's the unconscious thoughts and feelings, right? So it's not always a conscious thought or feeling for your values. It's what's deep down inside of you. And most of that stuff has been ingrained in you from when you were really little. Right. Okay. Most of your things are put in there between the ages of 7 and 14, positive or negative. Right.
I before I forget, that was another aha yesterday as I'm sitting in there listening to people, and we all have like, definitely when it comes to talking to people that are like strangers, I had this aha of you talked about being ingrained, being raised up, you were told not to talk to strangers. Yeah. And I'm like, how much of that is like what causes us now as adults to not talk to strangers so willingly? Like I literally was having this conversation with my husband on the way home from dropping off my child at school, like that with our kids. Like I want to teach my kids to not go away with strangers, but I don't want to teach my kids not to talk to strangers, because it's okay to talk to people you don't know, but there's like, there's guidelines to that, but still, like, I'm like, literally, that's all I can think of yesterday when people were like, we're literally told never to talk to strangers. Now as adults, that's what we're supposed to do to be a part of the community world. Like, but it's been beat into us, don't talk to strangers. Like, So anyways, I thought that was very interesting.
Absolutely. I think you're onto something there for sure. I think you're right. So yeah, right. That's 7 to 14. And it may be like negative like that, like don't talk to strangers, right? Is like deep down ingrained in you. Something that I find very interesting is that I was not a football fan growing up, but my dad, we lived in Paso Robles, which is part of Southern California. And he was like, he called them the funny Niners. He like would root for anybody but the 49ers, right? He really liked, there was another team, it wasn't necessarily Northern or Southern California team. Same thing with baseball. He rooted for the Dodgers and it was like no Giants, right? When we've lived up here for several years. My kids were born in Northern California. Their teams are called the Giants. All the other kids root for the Giants. It was really hard for me to even want to attend like a 49er game or a Giants game because it was so deeply ingrained in me to hate that team, even though I didn't even care. I didn't care one way or another about baseball or soccer, football or anything else. But it was just that like deep ingrained, like, oh, it's really hard to root for these people because it was so ingrained inside of me. Right?
Right.
Very true.
So, dun, dun, dun. Values come from lots of different places. So keep that in mind too. They come from family, friends, church or religion, school, where you grew up, your economic model or where you were economically, and then media as well. And you have the ability to accept or reject values, right? If your parents were gone all the time when you were young, you may be like, that's definitely not where I want to be. Like I want to be in my family, or maybe like me, like my parents showed up for every single sporting event I ever had. Like I knew I could count on them being there. And I was always like, that's exactly what I'm going to do when I have kids, right? I will be there.
Right.
Right. So those things came from like when we were little.
Or they teach you the opposite.
Or they teach you
My-
the
My
opposite.
parents weren't like that.
Yeah.
Like they never went to anything.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, I'm
I'm
there,
there.
I'm there.
Or you may be like, yeah, well, I survived and I turned out really okay. So if I don't show up for a baseball game, it's not a big
I'm
deal,
okay.
right? And that's okay. There's no wrong or right way to live or raise kids or run your life. It's just what's in alignment with your values. So just so it's not all the same. Some things that you can think about is you can ask yourself as you work through this, what's important to you about business, right? Or what's important to you about your personal life? Or what's important to you about relationships? So just kind of ask yourself that question and then start just writing down the words. What comes to mind when you say that or when you think that? And you want to try to get to like 3 to 4 to 5 words. If you end up with 7 or 8, that's totally fine too, because then what we're going to do is we're going to narrow it down a little bit. So that's kind of where you start is what's important to me about my spirituality? What's important to me about physical health, right? And you're going to kind of keep drilling it down to get some words in there and some thoughts. And there's no like wrong or right word when it comes to value. It's not like, well, that doesn't sound like a value. Well, that's okay. Like it doesn't really truly matter. Right? So just kind of know that there's no wrong or right answer. Okay. When you kind of have your list, or if you kind of get stuck, then the next question you would ask is, can you remember a time when you were totally motivated in the context of business? Right? Or can you remember a time when you were totally motivated in the context of spirituality or finances or your job, right? Or relationships? Can you remember a specific time? And then think about that time. As you remember that time, what was the last thing that you felt just before you were totally motivated? Can you give me a name for that feeling? Okay. And you're going to kind of continue that thought process until you start to kind of get repeat words. And just so you know, oftentimes when you talk about a time that you were totally motivated and what you felt just before you were totally motivated, oftentimes, although not always, it's going to kind of be a negative word, something that you are moving away from. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like when we were working through the finances one, I was like, where's my notes for that? One of the things that came up was shame. Like, was there a time that you were totally motivated by finances? And what was that thought or feeling right before you were motivated? My thought or feeling was shame. And that's what propelled me forward. And so we just want to kind of get to that place. And shame isn't necessarily a value. I mean, it is a value. It's a negative value that we kind of want to move away from. But it kind of gets you to that place of thinking forward. So if you're like, well, it was a negative thought, or it was, that's okay. That's part of the process of getting to the bottom of what your values are. And it was, okay, well, shame, well, why? And what was it shame of, right? And where are we going with that? So it gives you the opportunity to dig deeper and really think about that and use that word to kind of find the ones that are your values. Once you kind of have defined your like 3 to 5 values, obviously goal is like closer to 5. Then you're going to think about, if all of these values are present, is there anything that could happen that would make me leave? Or that would make me quit? Right? So when I look at business, which was freedom, flexibility, fun, fulfillment, and finances, if all of those are present, is there anything that would make me quit? Absolutely not. If I'm doing something that fulfills all 5 of those values, I am happy and content, and I would keep doing that until I died. Right?
We're not quitters.
We're not quitters. If all these values being present, plus, right? So if there was something that would make you leave, then the next question was all these values being present, plus
Yeah,
whatever.
where's your cup? Put your cup on the table.
Plus whatever it is that you just mentioned.
Sorry.
You're fine. I muted you. What would have to happen such that it would make you stay? Right? If you're like, no, I don't think that would be everything. I think there would be something else that would need to be. Okay, well, what is that? What would happen?
You know what? I just put the Zoom on my phone and travel in and listen in.
Yep, right there.
You need. All right. All right. The next question would be, if all of these values were present, what would have to happen such that would make you leave? Right? So we're going to ask, hey, if everything was here, is there anything that could happen that would make you leave? All the values being present, plus what you just happened, what would have to happen to make you just stay? All these values being present, what would have to happen such that would make you leave? And then that's kind of your goal. That's how you narrow them down. And then you want to make sure that you put them in order of priority. And then you want to define, well, okay, so in order of priority, just checking time, of all the above values, right, which one's the most important, right, to put them in order, assuming you have all the values. So like on mine, let's go back to business, right? So assuming you have freedom, is flexibility or fun more important to you? Right? I'm gonna be like, well, flexibility is more important to me, right?
Right.
Okay, assuming that you have freedom and flexibility, is fun or finances more important to you? Fun, right? I would take less money to have fun, right? So we're just putting them in order and we're continuing to work through the list. Assuming, the next question would be, assuming that you have freedom, fun, and flexibility, if you couldn't have fun, but you had freedom, would that be okay? Right? We're trying to really narrow down what is the most important. So if I had finances, but we didn't have freedom, would that be okay? No, I'd be done. I'd be out. Adios. Right? Abby. Okay, so that's where you're going to kind of narrow down. Welcome, Mila. You're going to rewrite that list of values according to your importance. And then you're going to write what success looks like for each of those values. And it may be all together, right? Like my business values each have their own definition of success versus my my health values, I had one long statement of what success looked like there, right? So there's no one way to do it, or right way or wrong way. So the questions to get to what success looks like is, how do you know when so like in business, how do you know when you have freedom? What does that look like? What does that mean to you? Right? What is your evidence? And what causes you to feel freedom and why? Right? So you're going to put what causes you to feel that and why. Right? So that's how you kind of narrow down what that value definition looks like to you and how you know that you've achieved it. What does success look like? There is
can just. Oh, you would be good in this.
no, you've got to come up with it on your own. That's part of the process.
Wow, way to go.
Okay. I will post the steps in the values for you guys. I'll take a picture of it and send it off to you guys of asking all those different questions and working through that. And does anybody have any questions before we jump on with our Lenders Corner?
What were they? Freedom, fun, flexibility?
On mine?
Yeah.
Oh, my business values are freedom, flexibility, fun, fulfillment, or making a difference, or having a purpose, and finances. For my business ones.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions?